And I think just for this first question, we'll just start on the far left and work our way across, and we'll just kind of go and riff with this. Can you share some of the some advice for the students and maybe parents to hear about getting involved in the student media while you're a student here at St. Cloud State?
I was really lucky. My roommate, she had been involved a prior semester and got me involved literally my first ever day at SCSU, and nothing better could have happened. There's so many opportunities here. There are, whether you want to go into TV, radio, print, there are just so many opportunities. And I think getting involved as soon as you can and doing as much as you can will really prepare you for a career in this business. And this industry is experience based. The more experience you have leaving college, the more things you can learn outside of the classroom, the better off you will be going into your first job.
Well, like Raquel, I actually got started right away. Actually, we met in line trying out for anchoring, and we've been friends ever since. But yeah, just my advice would be, if you think you want to be in news or you think you want to do sports, or just do as much as you can. Even the things you might not think you'd be that interested. I thought I was going to do sports. I'm reporting news now. So even just do as much as you can and get as involved as you can, because it's definitely worth it when you get into the real world.
I mean, my advice is going to be really similar to theirs. I think I talked to a fair amount of high school kids who are going into college who don't know what they want to do, and they get really bogged down with that, and they say, maybe I'll do community college. And if that's your journey, it's fine. But you're going to go into a situation of things that you don't know, and that's part of the fun, is that you're exposing yourselves to different cultures, to different people, to different experiences, and that's what being involved in so many different things. And like they said, maybe you didn't even know that you liked news, or if you like sports, or if you like maybe sciences or something else until you've kind of been immersed in that. So when you're here, taking advantage of all the different people that you can meet and cool things that you can do will really enrich your education, whether you're going to be a broadcaster or a political science major or anything. Just doing as much as you can, because I'm a firm believer in you don't really know who you are until you get out of your comfort zone, and you really find out what you like and what you don't like based on your own personal preference, not maybe what your high school friends like or what they do. So doing as much as you can while you're here, and even if that means sacrificing maybe a little bit of sleep or going home, it's really cool. So doing as much as you can is so important.
I agree with that 110%. I mean, like Joe said, being involved with KVSC for 2 years, what I went in with was this mentality of just doing whatever it was that I could to get as much experience as I could in many different things, whether that was... Actually, when I went into college, I was a political science major. I had no idea that mass communications or something in this field was something that I wanted to do. I always, public speaking always freaked me out, and it was something just completely foreign to me. But people always said, you have a decent voice for radio, you should give it a shot or something. And I found out that, whether it's KVSC, UTVS, I know that we have a great program at the University Chronicle, a great newspaper on campus. Get involved with everything that you can, because you just don't know where you're going to be 5 years in life, like I certainly was. I fell in love with radio the second that I got the courage to walk down. Actually, it took me 2 tries, because the first time I went down to KVSC, I thought I did such a bad job on the demo tape that I didn't come back for 6 more months after that. So just be willing to take a risk and be willing to do all that you can, because the experience here at St. Cloud State, that's really what the employers are going to be looking at when you go looking for a job. I had decent grades in school, but they have never asked me once for my GPA. What mattered was the experience that I had going into it.
Right, I'm going to throw this one off the cuff a little bit. Another person told me once, always say yes to everything. And I think about DeeDee with the sports thing, but I want all of you to think about maybe a nitty-gritty story where, whether it's in your UTVS, KVSC experience, when you went out and interviewed or did something that you never thought you're asked to know a little bit about everything, or at least learn a little bit of everything when you interview folks, or maybe in one of your experiences you've had professionally since you've graduated. I know, Dan, you were covering a lot of political news as well, and so was Josh in Iowa. But think of an example of a nitty-gritty story that you went into and went, wow, that came out pretty cool.
Well, I'll start off. Recently, it was couple months ago, I believe, both presidential candidates on the Democratic side, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, were in St. Paul for a fundraiser of some sorts with the DFL. And something that I learned right away in intro to radio is that they trained us, whether it's radio, it can apply to TV, I'm sure, too, and newspaper, you name it, any kind of media, is that you're no longer just doing one thing anymore. Back in the day, you might have just been a radio broadcaster, you might have just been a writer for a newspaper. But what I've really taken away from my experience in education is that you have to be willing to do a lot of different things. So at this event, for example, they let us get close to the podium. I was snapping photos of Hillary and Bernie while they were speaking, tweeting those out. Social media is a big part of what we do now. So social media was one thing. I was going back, I was doing live shots on the phone, kind of the radio broadcast portion of it. And then when I had time in between those two things, I was writing a story on my laptop. So those were three different things that I was kind of juggling all at once as opposed to one thing. And that's just an example and something to take into consideration, that I really think the more experience you have across many different platforms, that's really going to benefit you.
I have to add to that because I did think of something else too. I know Raquel and I, even though we work at a TV station, we've had to do some radio broadcasts. We just started this thing, and you can talk more about it. We do little news blips on the radio. I went to promote one of my sweeps pieces on the radio, and I thought, I was like nervous to do it. I was like, I'm on live TV every single day. Why am I nervous to do this? And in that moment, I'd wish I had done a little bit more with KVSC. I mean, I took a radio announcing class with Jim. Hey, Jim, which was a lot of fun. And I did focus a lot of time in UTVS, but it made me wish that I did more with KVSC because they do really kind of cross barriers. So you might have to do some radio, you might have to do some TV. And I know in Rochester, one of the newspapers, actually one of the reporters does a little TV segment every, I think, Friday previewing the Sunday paper. And I bet she never thought she'd be doing that. So yeah, go into more than one, do KVSC, do the Chronicle, do UTVS.
And I think with whether you are in radio or TV or newspaper, I guess I can't speak to that as much, but each day there's new deadlines. Each day you're forced to be kind of a mini expert on a topic that maybe you know nothing about, but you have to. You have to know what you're talking about that day. So having a wide range of knowledge and interests also really helps going into this business.
I think Joe talked about it. I just got back from New York covering the wrestling tournament, and I know nothing about wrestling at all. I just know that it's two men who hug each other. I mean, that's pretty much it. So I didn't know a lot of stuff, but one of the things that I learned here on the first day here is, you have faith and you say yes. So there's a guy back there in a maroon shirt. He's got a blazer on. His name is Mark Mills. Mark Mills, the first day I walked into this building, I was a non-traditional student. I was just going to come back to school and just kind of figure it out. He's like, so when you transfer in, you have to meet with Mark. He used to be the advisor. And he kind of gives you like an idea of what you're going to be going through. And he says to me, he goes, I think you'd be good at this TV thing. We need a producer. Can you do this? And I just said yes. I trusted him and I went with it. And it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Come to find out later, he tells all the pretty girls the same line. So, but I didn't know that at the time. But that is something that has stuck with me. When they asked me to cover wrestling, knowing nothing about wrestling, I just said yes because I had faith and I got those skills here, and I really learned that if you say no, they're going to find someone else. And that was something that I learned here, and I was really grateful for. So thanks for lying to me, Mark. I really appreciate it.
And by the way, St. Cloud State's home of the second two-time champion wrestling team by the national champions. So there you go. I would pass a little Husky pride there. All right, let's talk a little bit about balancing going to school, attending classes, maybe having a part-time job, balancing work-life student experiences. Can you share your thoughts on that? And I know that some of the best students that we know often spend a lot of time in Stewart Hall. But can you share your thoughts on balancing school, work, family, other challenges?
Do any of us have kids? Do any of us? Yeah.
No.
I hope not.
Okay, so I came back as a non-traditional student. I had to work, like many of you will. My parents didn't provide for me because I was too old at that point, so I had to work. So I think when you talk about balancing that school, work, and even personal life, because that's what college is about too, it's really about balance. You have to figure out, okay, you're going to stretch yourself extremely thin no matter what you do in college. You just have to figure out, okay, what's the balance going to be? Can I go off of maybe 6 hours of sleep? Can I do this without studying enough? And I think when you're in a major like this, you spend so much time in it, you learn so much, and it's easy to forget those other things. But I noticed as my work would get worse or better, it was because I was balancing things. So it's a lot of just being able to say yes to things when you should and being able to say no to things. But the one really cool thing about St. Cloud is that the students comprise about a third of the population in the city, so they know that we're a huge amount of the workforce, and they're okay just finding a job that's going to be okay for you to miss maybe work every once in a while because you have to study. But it's just being honest with what your limitations are and not trying to do too much. Because I see the people who have maybe who dropped out or changed majors or they couldn't handle it were the ones that couldn't balance it. But it is really, really important. And while school and work are important, it's also really important to kind of fulfill and enrich the rest of your life with some personal settings. And Joe told me too, and Derek told Derek, the guy who's running the camera over there, he said too, is that you're not really a true Husky until you slept in the basement of Stewart Hall. So you'll do that at some point, and the couches are comfy.
Well, I'll certainly add to that. The last year of my career here at St. Cloud State, I was actually working full-time at WJON, where I'm working right now. And I had to learn very quickly how to balance a full-time schedule here and a full-time schedule there. What helped me out quite a bit is that I was able to find an employer that was willing to be flexible with me. My hours were all over the place. I think Mondays I worked like a typical like 7:30 to 4:30. Then like Tuesday, Wednesday, I'd work like noon to 10 o'clock or something, working these odd hours. But I think what really benefited me was just, if I can give a simple tip, I don't want to lecture on time management by any means, but what really helped me was just planning out and making sure I sectioned my time whenever I could throughout the week. With those papers and everything, I'd have to section out, when am I going to have 15 minutes to knock this out? Or when am I going to have some time at work to do this? And if you're ever in a situation, you will have these situations in college no matter what, where you have to balance several things at once. Don't get too stressed out about it. That's the key part. You have to be willing to kind of be flexible and just roll with the changes, if you will. So.
And when it comes to, I got a lot more for what I'm doing now, a lot more out of my experience with UTVS. And so it was important to find that balance, though. Like, you need to go to class to remind yourself of that sometimes, because it's so exciting to be involved with the TV station or the radio station. But it is important to find that balance. And DeeDee and I were actually both hired before we had graduated and before we had our degrees, with several classes to finish still. And finding that balance is hard. It's hard. But you just need to prioritize what's best for you. Like he said, make a schedule for yourself. Make sure you have time for yourself, too. Don't burn yourself out. I think that is a mistake a lot of students probably do make.
Yeah, I'll just pretty much echo the exact same thing everyone was saying. I'll say that I got really lucky my time at UTVS and at St. Cloud State. I got to work at UTVS for the checkout desk, so I would be there pretty much all the time, which that was a huge perk, because I still got to be there, but I was getting paid at the same time. So it was a work-study program. So if you can find something like that, that's great. But yeah, it is going to be, there are going to be days, especially if you get really involved with the TV station, I can speak for definitely. There's going to be some days where you just want to keep staying and working on the newscasts for the day and maybe not go to that 2 o'clock class. But you got, like everybody said, just finding that balance is important.
Where the classes are training you on the ethics and the law and the writing, those are important as much as the practice.
Let me just say, go to class. I know it's going to be said a million times, but if there's one key thing that if you can take away from me, it's just show up to class, because not only are there participation points that are easy if you just show up, but you're going to find yourself way too far behind if you find yourself missing class 2 option. I know you're going to hear that all the time, but
as someone who teaches as an adjunct instructor, also if there's something happening in your life, talk to your professor, talk to your instructor, make an appointment. Often just having that communication open, they're willing to talk and work with you. So just don't forget that they're available to you as well.
One more thing I want to add to that, even though 3 of the people up here technically got jobs before we got our degrees, you had yours too, all 4 of us, okay, that's going to look really bad. I definitely wouldn't recommend it. I mean, I don't know what your guys' opinion is, but I found it really hard to have a full-time job at a TV station. I was trying to learn everything and then still having to take online classes to finish those last couple credits. So even though, I don't know, I don't know what your guys' opinion on that is.
It was tough. I mean, if you can afford the opportunity to stay here and refine what you're doing, spend the time. I see a lot of people now who are kind of floating, and they kind of just like finish. They don't like do anything to get ready for work. So if you have that extra time of like, I know I had a semester with like a half credits where I just worked instead. But if you're going to take that time and you're going to have kind of that like half semester, do things. Give yourself hard deadlines to get ready for that job. Don't just like finish school. Make sure you finish on a strong note instead of working.
I actually had to make a compromise. Would I take it back? No, I was very happy I felt very lucky to have the opportunity to have a full-time job in something that I really, truly love to do to this day. But I did have to compromise. When I started off, I had 16 credits, and after 2 weeks, I realized there's no way I'm going to be able to do 16 credits and full-time work as a news reporter and have a social life. So what I did is I dropped it down to 12, and I ended up having to spend an extra semester. So I spent 4.5 years at St. Cloud State, and that's the compromise that I personally had to make in order to keep that job, to make sure I was excelling in both or several areas of my life.
I think all the friends that we have that have been through these programs, you kind of just know when you're ready to leave. And I know that I was able to work and do it because I was ready. There wasn't much more I could get here in my time, that I was better served to go and work. And I think that's probably a big thing. You feel it. I know it's easier to give a hard kind of like, you should only do 3.5 years or 4 years, but it's like, you feel ready. I can't learn anything else here. I'm sick of Derek's stuff. I'm sick of Mark's stuff. I'm ready to go. So,
Well, that'll dovetail into my next question, and maybe all of your TV and radio stations. I know that Town Square Media has an internship program. Can you talk about the idea of maybe having an internship your junior or senior year in the summer or one of the semesters, and the value of being an intern at a media center and gaining that experience outside of the student media?
You should absolutely get an internship. I am in support of it 110%. It was something that I did, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity if I wasn't an intern. And like I said when I first started talking, is that experience is what really matters in this field, and I think for many fields where school counts. Obviously, you want to get the good marks in school, but what got me into the field was the experience that I had in doing these internships. I started off at Town Square Media as an intern, doing anything from bannering promotional events to helping staff, grab stuff out of their trucks, you name it. Eventually moved to part-time work over the summer doing some production work, and then when there was an opening in the newsroom, that's when you really need to have your foot in the door. It's one thing if they know if they know your face and they know your name. It's the old and maybe cliche statement, but it rings true that it's all about who you know when you first are trying to enter in whatever field that you may happen to choose.
Yeah, I actually did my internship right before graduation, and so a lot of the people that I was working with at UTVS, they wanted to do their internships right away, and they wanted to go to KARE 11 or the Twin City stations, which are really cool to see, and I highly recommend setting up a tour. But I decided to intern at KIMT, a very small market station. Highly recommend it, because you're not going to be able to do a whole lot if you intern at a large market station. You'll be able to watch and all that kind of stuff, observe. But I actually, by the end of my internship, was writing stories that were going on air, shooting stories that were going on air. So it was, and it gave me such a realistic picture of what my average day was going to be like. Not to mention, KARE 11's probably not going to hire you right out of St. Cloud State. KIMT did. I interned there, recognized my name. Obviously, they knew my work because I was writing stories for them, and so it was a really smooth transition to working full time. I already knew everybody, I knew the expectations, and I knew sort of how the day was set up. So I would highly recommend doing that, and junior and senior year would be a really good time, I think.
I would echo what she said too. I think I did my internship at a really big station in Seattle. I think internships are really cool because you get to go to different places and experience things, and you kind of have that umbrella of, okay, I'm doing this for school credit. A lot of places are really comfortable bringing you out. But I think if I had to change anything with my internship, it would have been doing something similar to hers, doing something maybe after my junior year where I had a strong skill set, go to a small station, learn, see what the real world is going to be, go back to school with those skills and tools that I learned, and then maybe go to a big station to see how they went well and do kind of what Dan did, where you can network and kind of show, hey, our school is for real. We learn real things, and we're good to go out of college. And then they've already kind of made the circuit of working at small stations, and they can really, really help you find the job. And that's what happened to me. The news director at the station that I went to worked at a small station, worked at a couple stations, and he helped me get my job where I work now. So if you, and the credits allow you to do it, you can take multiple internships, and the more experience you can get and expose yourself to different things, it's always a benefit. So a couple would be really cool.
My next question, I'm going to kind of combine. You touched on it a little earlier, but let's talk about multimedia convergence or multi-platform. Meaning when they hire you, you'll be doing a lot of things. You mentioned, and that's very common even in small and medium and large markets for radio and TV ownership groups to own both media. They may own the TV, a set of the TV station as well as some AM/FM properties. Talk about the radio, TV. Let's talk social media, what they expect of you. Dan, you're a radio guy doing video. So if you could just talk about the skill sets that are expected, both social media and other in your job.
Yeah, like I said, when I was hired on radio, I knew that it wasn't just going to be radio. In fact, this almost sounds bad to say, but I think radio is a very small fraction of what I do on a day-to-day basis. I do these 5-minute news breaks typically between 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and that's a majority of it. I fill in for the morning shows and whatnot from time to time. What I mostly do is anything from writing online. You have to be comfortable with writing online and those platforms and whatnot. So journalism experience. Social media is huge in any sort of job in this field. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram are picking up speed. I know YouTube is a huge thing for us at WJON in Town Square right now. And we get a lot of confused looks when we say we're a radio station out and about with our video camera wanting to interview people out on the scene. But it's really become a point of emphasis for not just us, but Town Square Media, the big company as a whole, trying to create more digital and video content. So I'm a guy going into radio, didn't think I would be in front of camera very much, but I probably do that almost just as much as behind the microphone. Just this week, I'm working on a story trying to find out if St. Cloud drivers are really the worst drivers in the state of Minnesota, because that's a rumor that circulates all the time, and everybody's got an opinion on that. So it's been a lot of interviewing people on camera, a lot of stand-ups in front of camera, and the radio is kind of on the side. So like I said, just absorb everything you can, because the more skills you have, that's what's going to benefit you.
And on the other side of that, in TV, we are recording daily promos that go to our local radio stations, a little news cut-in that the radio stations use. So we record them, we send them to the stations, they use that. Our meteorologists do weather updates for the paper and also for the radio stations. So yeah, I think it all kind of comes together, and social media is becoming way more it needs to be used now. It used to just be kind of another tool. Now it's a necessity, and I'm sure you guys all have more skills than probably we do. So you're lucky there that you're growing up in the social media age, because it's been a little bit of an adjustment. I don't know. It's hard. Social media is hard for me, but yeah, it's good. You gotta do it.
Well, I know reporting specifically social media is huge, unless it's a huge breaking news story where you're going to cut into programming. You're not going to get that story on until maybe 5 o'clock, but people want to know what's going on, so you live tweet what's happening. We had a bomb threat, when was that, last year? And, pictures, videos. I was taking videos on my phone and tweeting them out and sending them to the station, and basically giving a step-by-step of what was happening at the scene long before. This was at like noon, and so we weren't going to have a newscast until 5. So, it was important to keep people informed, especially with something as serious as that. But again, the radio thing, I know for those of you interested in going into print, I don't know about your newspaper, but the Rochester newspaper, they have a regular reporter, and then they'll have somebody out there with a video camera too, getting video interviews for their online website.
I think I would be really excited if I was your guys' age going into college. Like they said, it's all one, and you guys have grown up with the concept of constantly updating things, and it's ingrained in you. You guys probably got cell phones, 6th, 7th grade? You guys have been sharing things and putting up videos and doing things. So things that we kind of had to learn on the fly, you guys, it's going to be second nature to you guys. So you guys are going to find more creative ways to tell stories and more creative ways to interact with people, and that's going to be a fun thing, because eventually, like we're all talking about, it's just going to be news. There's not going to be TV. There's not going to be radio. There's not going to be newspaper. It's just going to be one mush gray mesh of where you're kind of doing everything. So the skill sets where you can listen and text at the same time are going to be something that are really fantastic, right, White Blazer? I'm joking. Oh. No, it's fine. It's good, but it's exciting that you guys are so good at this stuff, and it's going to be fun to see where you guys take news over the next, 20 years.
All right, I have one final question. Then I'm going to see if you guys have questions as well that you can ask them about maybe a favorite story, maybe they had an interesting experience with a major athlete or a megastar or whatever of interest you might have for them. This is a good time for student or parent questions. But I have one final question. What does it mean to be a St. Cloud State Husky?
All right, I'm going to start this one because I'm sure we're going to have similar answers. But what I've experienced is when you're out and about and people are asking where you went to school and you say St. Cloud, people know what that means. If you're in media, if you're in mass media and you say, I was a Husky, people automatically know, oh, of course you were. I know a bunch of people that graduated from St. Cloud State in the industry. In fact, our market has a ton of Huskies. Like we used to have the most at our station, but now I think a competing station has the most. But they know that, and almost every single person knows somebody that graduated. Oh yeah, I know somebody that graduated from St. Cloud State, and they're in the business. So it's just it's well known and it's well respected, and people know that you are going to be ready for your job if you're a Husky.
That you stole all the answers right away. Just right out of the gate.
I wanted to go first.
No, I was thinking
Exactly that.
I think she's right. I think for me it means you're ready. There are high expectations when you leave here because there are so many people that are working, and you get such a unique skill set here that take a lot of people the time to learn in their first job, and we're ready to go out of the gate. So that's, for me, it means, and it meant for me when I was done that, I was ready.
I would just add that our newsroom at WJON, I think with the exception of one person, we have a team of about half a dozen people. We're all St. Cloud State graduates, with the exception of our news director, oddly enough. But he hired a lot of us because he knew that we were local, we had experience in St. Cloud, and we were St. Cloud State graduates, and he knew that what we have to offer here is really spectacular. And whether it's the radio station at KVSC, a great opportunity down there, fantastic studios. If I had one regret, it's that I didn't at least try UTVS. The studios and technology they have is just absolutely incredible. The University Chronicle too. I mean, those are really, really great to get that hands-on experience that's really, really, really valuable. And I think that, being St. Cloud State Husky, that's what it's all about. If you can have that experience already by the time you're applying for jobs, that's gonna be a big part of what can land you a job.
I think you would have been a good anchor, good UTVS anchor.
Oh, thank you. I always thought I had a face for radio back in the...
Raquel, did you have any comments on that?
Honestly, I think they stole it from me. So
All right.
Enjoy the
anyone
hockey games too, of course. That's a big part of it.
Husky hockey culture. Any questions for our panelists? This is a chance for you to ask something that we might not have talked about being involved, or how to get from one place to the next. What professors to avoid? It's always a good one. Oh. No, I should say what professors to take. Yeah.
That might have
When
been
you
bad.
were talking about balance, you mentioned letting your professors know if you have something going on in your life. How did you guys feel about your relationships with your professors, and how accessible were they, and what kind of relationships did you have with them?
Good. I mean, especially like the mass communications professors, they were very understanding. If there was a breaking news situation and we needed to be in the newsroom, for example, they're understanding about that. And then just in general, I had a good experience with almost all of my professors just in St. Cloud State in general, not just in the mass comm department. So that was my experience.
I had great experiences with all my professors. When in doubt, your professors are people too, and they're not looking for excuses, but they're willing to be flexible with you. And I have to give a quick shout out to Jim Gray back there. He was and Joe, of course, two very close advisors. Whether it was helping me, with what classes should I take at what time, that real life experience at KVSC and Oshkosh. Jim could tell you a lot of stories that I probably shouldn't mention here right now, but another great real life experience experience there. But yeah, when in doubt, talk to your professors. I mean, then that's what they do. And I didn't have a bad experience whenever I had a question, or office hours. Take advantage of that. Professors told me all the time, I have these open 2-hour blocks of office hours and nobody comes to visit me, so I assume things are fine. So drop by and say hello or mention things to them if you have questions.
I think across the university, the teachers, the reason they do this is not because they get paid a ton, it's because the opportunity to connect with students. So if they can enrich lives by sharing stories and helping you kind of go through your problems, that's why they do it. And I've spent hours, hundreds of hours, either whining to Derek or Joe about my issues that I was having, both inside the newsroom and outside of the newsroom. So that was one of the most enriching things that I had, and it's a thing that I still carry today. I mean, I still talk to Derek. Oh, by the way, it's Derek's birthday, so when you get a chance, tell Derek happy birthday.
I would just add that the nice thing specifically with, the mass comm professors and UTVS is they're around. I mean, Derek's office is right next to the studio. So it's not like you only see him in class and then you can never get a hold of them. You have to email them. They're around. So that's one of the things that I found most helpful.
I see Emily, a recent graduate too. Talk about being a producer versus being an anchor from the television point of view.
Same thing.
So they can
It's
distinguish.
the same thing. So especially at smaller stations, and even, I mean, I guess I don't know how it is. Do you guys have producers?
Yeah, we have producers.
You do. Okay. Well, first, when you start out, like, I am an anchor, but I produce almost all of the newscasts that I anchor. So, and it's just, I can't imagine now if I was to go somewhere where I was just an anchor. I think I would be bored because I enjoy the producing part of it. The more involved you are in your stories, I mean, you know your show top to bottom because you are in charge of it. And producing is really fun. It's really, really fun. It's like a puzzle putting together a show. And so, if you want to just be an anchor, it's not going to happen, at least not right away. So I think it's really all, and the better you are at one of them, the better you'll be at the other. And same goes for reporting. You kind of need to know how to do everything. And SCSU's media programs really give you the skills to do that.
Being from radio, we don't really have I produce a lot of the news. I'm behind. It's always nice when you're reading from your own stories. I like being involved in stories. It's one thing to anchor the news. I do love the chance to be on the radio and whatnot. That's what I got into. But it's another thing to be out on the scene, to see it firsthand, to tell those stories. I think you actually have to be there from point A to point B. So that's just what again, it's all about being versatile and being willing to do just about anything and not just one particular thing.
And I'd like to touch just briefly on sports. I know that Josh, you helped produce Husky Sports. DeeDee, you were a sports director. Talk about your experiences with Husky Productions or covering, was it the D1 hockey or the basketball program, and what kind of experience that was for you?
Probably my favorite part. I mean, sometimes we're going to be working, quote unquote, on the weekends, but it is so much fun to be a part of a live broadcast. I mean, the news is, UTVS news is live, but I remember one of the first things I did with HP was rolled tapes, rolled the replays, and just to get that experience and to get that live broadcast. I mean, it's as close to the real thing as you're going to get, especially HP. I know when I was sports director, we started doing basketball, broadcasting the basketball games. If you want to do sports, like this is the place to do it, because there's so many different things. There's Husky Mag, which is a recorded show, so that's not the pressure of being live. But and also I would say with that is, shooting for news is different than if you want to shoot highlights for a game. So learning how to do both. I mean, I fill in for sports at my station right now, so I'm very glad that I know how to do that, and I have the experience that I got here. Otherwise, I would be probably completely lost. But they're two different things. They're the same, but it's a little different in shooting and obviously anchoring or reporting. But there's so many great opportunities if you do want to get into sports broadcasting, from in front of camera to behind the camera. Yeah.
I had a similar experience where I was with sports. I was the EP of the basketball program, and the basketball program is so far down past the hockey program that we don't get to cover a lot of stuff. So one of the cool things when I was here is that we only missed maybe 1 or 2 games, Derek, in my 3 years. We did all the men's, women, and basketball games, home games here, and that's where you get to learn. You get to mess up, and it's okay, and then you get to learn from those mistakes. So getting a chance to do sports is something that you can't replicate anywhere else. You're never going to get an opportunity to do. You were here, what, 3 years? You did HP for how long?
We only did HP 1 year.
Okay,
Then I
one.
did Husky Mag and then basketball.
So you probably did over 40, no, maybe it'd be like 20 games, 20 hockey games.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I mean, a lot of people who are getting into the industry don't get to do that amount of games, and she only did it for 1 year. So getting that opportunity to cover those things is something, if you're interested in sports, that you're not going to get. Because I know, though, like the entry-level jobs with like sports production, you're going to be rolling cord or wrapping tape. You're not going to be able to work with the replay machine or do play-by-play. And, I mean, freshmen right out of the gate are doing stuff here on air and in some of the big-time positions. So it's really, really cool to do some of the sports stuff, and it really helps.
And you get to, if you're a reporter, you get to, like for HP, you get to interview Division I hockey coaches. I mean, that's a crazy, nobody else would get that kind of experience in college.
Absolutely.
There's just so many sports here at St. Cloud State. I wish that I did a few minor things here on the side, but there's basketball. Of course, there's Husky hockey. There's so many opportunities there, and the production is top notch. A little shout out to Taylor back there. I know she does phenomenal work for the Huskies over the last few years. She's interviewed all the players, you name it, and it's been. If you look at the Husky games on TV that they do, you have no idea that that St. Cloud State's really doing this. It's beyond impressive. So if you have even the slightest interest in sports, get involved with it.
And I would think Derek could echo that a lot of the employees at FSN came right from St. Cloud State if you're into sports. So any final questions for the panel before we wrap up? And oops, here's a young student.
Very young student. Question for you, because I got a lot of my students here. Let's say that they're coming to St. Cloud State. They don't know what they want to do. They don't know if it's mass communication or political science. And on day one, they come onto this campus. Who do they go and seek out to get involved with these activities? Who did you go out and seek out so they could kind of experience this? We saw some pretty amazing facilities, but freshmen, they're just trying to figure out where the lunchroom is and what time it is they're going to eat. But they got this thing in the back of their mind to get involved. Well, how do they get involved? Do you have a freshman orientation type thing? Or can they just walk into the TV studio and say, hey, I'm a freshman. I'm here for 4 years. I don't know anything about you. Can you put me to work?
Did you have a
Yes and
camera?
yes.
Did you have a camera in the newsroom? Because that's exactly how it goes. You just go in and say you're going to be here.
Yes and yes, but can you all remember how you got involved and what got you connected to the student media? And there's also 200 organizations on campus. It's a very active campus with student organizations. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I remember the general meeting for UTVS. There were, flyers out. I think my roommate at the time told me about it. So you go to this meeting and they kind of give you a rundown of what UTVS is, and then you can sign up to be a part of the different shows that are produced at UTVS. And if you want to, you can try out to be an anchor sports weather person, which was always very exciting. A little intimidating at first. I will say when I first got in line, I was like, what am I doing here? But stay in line because it's totally worth it.
The way that I found out KVSC was a little odd. I was working in just part-time jobs and drive-thrus, and people were always like, you'd sound pretty good on radio, and I didn't really think too much about it until I stumbled upon KVSC's website that said, we'll train you in to be a DJ for free. You've got to just show up. So I was kind of an odd route, but what I remember my freshman year that I thought was very fascinating is that there is an event, I believe it's late August or early September, called Main Street, where all the student organizations, the clubs, anything from KVSC to rugby, athletics, to sustainability organization, anything that you can imagine, there's a club for. There's Quidditch here at St. Cloud, as far as I still remember, and they just have these displays out, and you can just walk out, and anything that interests you. I think the process, you just write down your email address, and then they'll get in touch with you. So if you're looking to just get, find something that interests you, if you're not quite sure, Main Street is a great event. I think there's one in the spring too called Side Street, a smaller event too. If you want to check it out, then that's what I would recommend.
I think, I mean, so many of us have different stories, and you guys are all different from one another, but anyone who's been in college knows what that first day is like and how nervous that is. So we all know how fantastic it was to have someone reach out to us and talk to us and kind of guide us and any of that stuff. I mean, I remember freshmen walking in the newsroom all the time who didn't know anyone and say, hey, I want to learn. So just reaching out and making yourself accessible is so big. And you guys are from Andover, right? You guys are going to know someone who goes to school here who's going to be able to help you out. I mean, Andover is an hour away. So even if that person is maybe not in the major, they know someone who's in UTVS or someone who's in KVSC, because, I mean, we do have a lot of people.
And they're also, it's welcoming. Like, honestly, my best friends to this day are UTVSers. Like, it's just like, don't be intimidated to walk. Even if you do, just walk in the newsroom and say, hey, I want to get involved. How can I go about doing it? You know, they just welcome you. So
I think even worst case, you'll probably get some free food out of it. We always have food wherever these things are at. So
UTVS pens.
KVSC had that too. Popcorn, quite a bit.
We have a meeting today that has Dickie's barbecue.
Oh, you upgraded. Wow.
Well, thank you, panelists. It's really been a pleasure to hear your stories and know of your successes. But Dan, go ahead.
Let me just say really quick, I'll leave a few of my business cards right here. And I being in the internship experience, if anybody has any further questions, you just didn't want to speak out here or short on time or whatever, if you're interested in internships in radio, I'll leave these here. Feel free to shoot me an email anytime. I'll just leave a few of my business cards up there. Thanks for the time.
Can we have a round of applause for our panelists? And I'm not in charge of the next step, but I believe it involves lunch. Can somebody confirm? Follow this gentleman. Garvey Commons, correct? Garvey Commons.